In March 2026, the United States and Israel bombed Iran. Oil prices exploded overnight. Americans paid record prices at the pump for a war they never voted for. The Strait of Hormuz, the choke point for 20% of the world's oil supply, came within hours of closing completely. Iranian cities shook. 90 million people woke up in the middle of someone else's geopolitics. And when the dust settled, the regime was still standing, the sanctions were still running, and ordinary Iranians were still paying for all of it. This is what actually happened. And what comes next? Tanner Horner, a former FedEx driver in Texas. On the 5th of May, 2026, just yesterday, a jury sentenced him to death for the kidnapping and murder of 7-year-old Athena Strand. The case exploded on every American screen, in every news broadcast, in every conversation, a horrific event. What do you think about it? Let's get back to our topic. That same week, Iran was dealing with the aftermath of U.S. and Israeli attacks that shook the entire Middle East. Two separate events. One country is only paying attention to one of them. That's precisely the problem with how America views Iran and why most Americans still don't understand what actually happened in March 2026. The 14th of March 2026, U.S. and Israeli forces launched coordinated attacks targeting Iranian nuclear facilities, Revolutionary Guard command centers, and missile production facilities. The attacks lasted 72 hours. Tehran was shaken. Isfahan was shaken. Natanz was hit again. Iran launched retaliatory drone and missile attacks across the region. The Strait of Hormuz, a narrow waterway carrying 20% of the world's total oil supply, faced the threat of closure. Oil prices surged 40% in 72 hours. American families, already struggling with inflation, were confronted with unprecedented figures when they went to gas stations. A war 6,000 miles away directly impacted their wallet. A ceasefire was quietly brokered 11 days later. There were no victory parades, no clear winner, just damage, disruption, and a regime still standing in Tehran, angrier, more isolated, and more dangerous than before. Americans didn't vote for this war, but they're paying the price every day. Gasoline prices hit record highs in March 2026, not because America's running out of oil, but because a single conflict in a region 6,000 miles away is controlling the price of everything. Grocery shopping, heating bills, Amazon deliveries. Every truckload of goods in America became more expensive the moment the first missile hit Tehran. Working class families, already struggling due to years of inflation, faced yet another price hike that they couldn't fit into their budgets. No warning, no vote, no choice. How could a country so far away affect us so much? And here's the cruel iron. Iran has the second largest natural gas reserves on the planet, the third largest oil reserves. The resource wealth is real, but almost none of it reaches ordinary Iranians, and almost none of it stabilizes global markets as it should, because sanctions excluded Iran from the legitimate oil market years ago. That's why Iran sells oil to China at huge discounts through unofficial back channels that the U.S. ignores. The revenue is controlled by the Revolutionary Guard. The Iranian government finances its military machine, and the Iranian people are watching their currency collapse in real time. The rial has lost 90% of its value in the last decade. Inflation is at 40%. It's an oil-dependent country, and the average Iranian can't even afford basic medicine. Maybe China grew so big because of America. The 2026 attacks made all of this worse. Export infrastructure was damaged. The little legitimate trade that remained was also disrupted. Ordinary Iranians are now poorer, angrier, and more trapped than they were before the bombs fell. And ordinary Americans are still paying the price at gas stations for a war their government is waging on their behalf without asking them first. NATO said almost nothing. That silence was louder than anything they could have said. The world's most powerful military alliance, built for moments like these, looked at Iran in March 2026 and unanimously decided it wasn't their problem. Europe was very worried about energy prices. Germany was very worried about its economy. France was very worried about its elections. And meanwhile, the Middle East was ablaze. Who do you think NATO is against? America or Russia? Is Trump right to be angry at NATO? China moved quickly. While Western governments were still writing statements, Beijing was talking to Tehran on the phone, signing discounted oil contracts, offering reconstruction investment, positioning itself as the only major power that didn't bomb Iran, and then came out with money. The China-Iran relationship isn't friendship, it's a transaction. China gets cheap oil, Iran gets a lifeline. And while America debates it on cable news, it watches its global influence shrink in real time. And China continues to grow stronger. Russia watched and said nothing publicly. but privately, every passing day of this conflict is a good day for Moscow. High global oil prices mean high energy revenues for Russia. The West's attention being divided between Ukraine and Iran reduces pressure on Russia. A 2026 war with Iran not only destabilizes the Middle East, but also provides Vladimir Putin with exactly the distraction he needs. And then there's Israel, the country that is pushing the hardest for attacks, the country that will benefit most from the destruction of Iranian military infrastructure, and the country that will not experience any of the economic consequences that Americans and Europeans are currently experiencing. Gasoline prices in Tel Aviv aren't rising like they are in Texas. The risk is shared, the benefit is not. Whether the West accepts it or not, a new global alliance is forming. On one side, Iran, Russia, China. On the other, the US, Israel, a reluctant Europe, and every ordinary person, American, Iranian, European, is paying the price for a conflict chosen by their governments and never approved by their people. Imagine you were born in Iran in 2026. You turn on your phone, half the internet is blocked. Instagram, YouTube, VPNs are technically illegal. You want to protest, you've seen what happens to those who protest. But Mahsa Amini died in 2022 under the surveillance of the morality police. How many people remember that event? Her name is still written on walls all over Tehran. 3 years later, the same police are still on duty. The same laws are still in effect. The same regime is still in power. It must be a very difficult life. Being born a woman in Iran in 2026 means your testimony in court is worth half that of a man. It means you can't leave the country without your husband's permission. How you wear your hair in public is considered a political act that could lead to your arrest. Being born a young person in Iran in 2026 means watching your most educated peers, doctors, engineers, programmers, anyone with options and a passport leave the country. The brain drain is accelerating every year. People who could build something better, they're already in Toronto, already in Berlin, already in Dubai. Those left behind, younger, poorer, angrier, and with no clear way out. The 2026 attacks didn't liberate anyone inside Iran. On the contrary, they made the situation worse. When a country is bombed from the outside, governments don't lose power, they consolidate it. The Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, tightened its control. The opposition became even more dangerous overnight. The same regime that had lost legitimacy among its own people suddenly had a foreign enemy to point to. The bombs that were supposed to weaken the Islamic Republic gave it a new reason for existence. 90 million people, most under 35. Most want what everyone else wants: a job, a working phone, a future worth living. And none of them had the right to vote. It seems all of Iran's wealth is going to bombs. No one won the 2026 Iran war. That's the answer no one in Washington wants to give. Nuclear facilities were damaged, not destroyed. Iran's missile program was set back months, not years. The Revolutionary Guard lost equipment and immediately began rebuilding. The regime, expected to weaken, emerged from the attacks with a new enemy, a new reason to justify its existence, and a population angry not at its own government, but at America. This is not a victory. This is a gift. Who understands why this war was waged? Please write in the comments. Subscribe to the channel. We continue. America spent billions of dollars, deployed aircraft carriers, risked pilots, increased its own inflation, further alienated China, gained a distraction from Russia, and the Islamic Republic still stands in Tehran on the same foundations it was established on in 1979. Those who designed these attacks knew this from the beginning. This actually raises the only important question. If eliminating the regime was never the real goal, what was it? Oil, dominance, the Strait of Hormuz, a message to China about who controls the world's energy transit points. This was never about the Iranian people. It was about the map, and 90 million Iranians live on that map, whether they like it or not. The regime survives. It always survives. But something broke in 2026 that is completely irreparable. A generation of Iranians watched their country being bombed, the world turning a blind eye, their currency further losing value, and their government tightening control instead of loosening it. This generation will not disappear. The question is not whether Iran will change. The question is who will pay the price before it changes, and the answer, as always, is 90 million people with no say. They were born on the wrong chessboard in the wrong coordinates. That's the bad thing about being born Iranian. Please subscribe to the channel and like the video. We need support. America, be on our side.